This isn't normal streaming time, but I'm gonna try something new. Yeah, kids and stuff are back to school, so I gotta start streaming at a different time of the day. So, I just finished the campaign. I was gonna stream the campaign for Space Marine 2, but I think I would have been more distracted. I would have been able to enjoy it, and it was really good. So there's that. I got just as a camera. But we're gonna get into some lore, and I'm gonna do operations with you guys and with my buddy Will, most likely, who's also playing the game. And by you guys, I mean anyone who sees this after recording, because my chat's usually super dead. So we're going to chat for a little bit. We're going to watch this video. I picked something I found personally interesting, and then after that, we can probably get into like the beginning or whatever there is, because Warhammer 40K has been around since the 80s. So we'll find something interesting to play after this one. But this is the one I personally really want to learn about. It's 2 hours long, perfect length for a stream, so let's do that. Put the chill vibes away a little bit. Jesus.
Greetings, everyone. Today you will learn about the greatest triumph of the Great Crusade and the exaltation of the first among equals. The Great Crusade quickly gained momentum after the capture of the solar system.
I think this guy's using AI
Astartes,
to do the voice.
Supported by the forces of the Imperial Army, Skitarii cohorts, the Mechanicum Army, and the Titan legions, methodically expanded the boundaries of human dominion. Imperial archivists and historians were always seeking any clues about human-populated planets from the Dark Age of technology. The fleets of Mechanicum explorators and families of free traders also assisted in this endeavor. At the vanguard of the crusade stood the Emperor personally, with Horus at his right hand.
Look at that hair, dude.
Father and son spent a great deal of time together. Horus absorbed the wisdom and ingenuity of the Emperor and also learned the art of war from him.
Yo, look at his armor.
Over time, the Emperor and Horus grew very close. In battle, they invariably fought shoulder to shoulder.
My buddy pointed out while
they conversed
we were playing the campaign, is that it's basically so far into the future that it's medieval again. You know what I'm saying? The 42nd century that the stories take place in and stuff in the games. There's like a separate universe of 40K or of Warhammer that's like in actual medieval times, but this I feel like is like the big kahuna.
Hours. During one battle, Horus lost consciousness from a plasma charge hit, and the Emperor alone defended his son against the onslaught of the enemy until reinforcements arrived. On the planet Goro, Horus had the opportunity to repay the Emperor. During a battle with the Orcs, a massive Orc war boss knocked the Master of Mankind down and began to strangle him. Seeing this, an enraged Horus rushed to his father's aid and tore the Orc chieftain's arm off. The Emperor trusted his son infinitely.
Very similar, no spoilers, to what happened to Chiron. Well, it is spoilers, to Chiron in the story for Space Marines 2. That's funny. I feel like they did that on purpose.
Another Primarch's arm off. Enraged Horus rushed to his father's aid and tore the Orc chieftain's arm off.
Yeah.
The Emperor trusted his son infinitely, and so when another Primarch was found and the Emperor needed to temporarily leave the crusade, it was Horus who was honored to lead the crusade further until the father's return. During this time, the Lunar Wolves Legion earned a great many accolades for their valor. The zeal to be first and best remained with the Legion even after reunification with other Primarchs. The reputation of the Legion always preceded their fleet. Regiments of the Imperial Army and even other legions of Space Marines often requested their participation in joint operations with the Lunar Wolves, all to personally witness the famed Legion in action.
I did with Destiny and
as for the relationship with his brother Primarchs, Horus tried to maintain relations with each, becoming
Hey, they could probably hear you. Stop. Psst. Cut it out. Shit.
A close friend to the majority of them. He was incredibly happy every time his lost brothers were found and tried to get to know them as soon as possible. They, in turn, were drawn to him as the most experienced and closest to the Emperor. Horus also had an incredible ability to utilize all his combat resources and to see the most complete picture of the battlefield. This meant that he always knew precisely how to employ each legions of Astartes, not just his own, but every regiment of the Imperium army as well. The Crusade knew many glorious victories in the name of the Imperium, but its peak of triumph was manifested on the world of Ulanor Prime. In the Ulanor system there were several planets, all of which had been seized by the Orcs under the command of Warboss Uruk. This was one of the largest Orcish empires in the history of the galaxy, and thus posed a significant threat to the advancing fleet of the Great Crusade. By that time, nearly all the Primarchs had been found, so for such a large-scale battle, as many of these legendary demigods as possible were needed. In that battle, besides Horus, Rabut Gilliman and Jagatai Khan also participated with their legions. As a result, the following plan was devised. The Primarchs would attack all the planets in the system except for Ulanor Prime, and as soon as the main forces of the Greenskins rushed to defend the planets, the Emperor and Horus, with the support of the Lunar Wolves and the Imperial Army, would deliver a lightning strike on the capital on the main planet. This was Horus's favourite tactic, striking with the spearhead of his army at the head of the enemy's army, so that after its head was crushed, its body would fall under its own weight. While the Emperor and the main forces, with Titan Legion support, stormed Uruk's palace, Horus, with a circle of elite warriors in Terminator armor known as the Justarin, teleported directly inside.
His armor has a name.
Horus's squad had to hack their way through Orc hordes before they reached the throne room. There, they were met by a whole gang of large Orc knobs, as the best warriors among Orcs are known, and leading them was the war boss of the Orc Empire himself. Merely upon seeing him, Horus charged into the attack, trying to tear the enemy apart with his lightning claws. The Justarin tried to support the Primarch with bolters, but fearing accidentally harming him, also rushed into melee combat. It was a most intense battle, but ultimately Horus managed to impale...
If anyone played through the campaign of Space Marines 2, holy shit, that ending was nuts. Like, that was... Like, the cinematics, oh my god. I don't know if anyone eventually watching this has seen the Astartes fan film that was made by, like, the one guy a few years ago. But you should watch that. That was really cool.
Urlak with his claws. The Primarch lifted him over his head, carried him to the balcony of the palace, and tossed him towards the defending Orcs. Seeing their great boss turned into a piece of meat, the Orcs wavered, and the remaining knobs immediately began to divide power and declare themselves the new emperors of Ulanor. Despite the attack of the Imperial forces, the Orcs began to fight among themselves for power. Watching the ensuing chaos, Horus understood that victory had come at the moment of the boss's killing. I'm going to link this YouTube channel
when I post this
Returning
mod.
To the throne room, the
I would
Primarch
like to know
saw that
if
all
this is
the
the actual
Norbs
guy
were
talking
dead.
or if it's an AI
But from
voice.
his squad, only one Space Marine remained. He was the leader of the Justarin, the captain of the first company of the Lunar Wolves, Ezekiel Abaddon, who was also the closest friend and advisor to Horus. At the
Yeah, my mistake for not even mentioning that. Imperial Iterator. I've watched some of the videos in the past. They're really good. They're really good. They're really good. No transcript or anything like that. I'll link them. In the description.
Same time, Khan and Gilliman also conducted brilliant campaigns on neighbouring planets, so in the following months, the warriors of the Imperium were only occupied with searching for surviving Orcs. For the Imperium, this was the greatest victory of the campaign, a triumph that would go down in legends. Horus had many achievements to his name even before Ulanor, and after He became the greatest hero of the Imperium, of course, after the father. The Emperor decided to immortalize the significance of this victory. Platoons of the Mechanicus Geoformers were convened on Ulanor Prime. With their machinery, they cleared all orc corpses, laying atop a giant plaza exceeding the size of several cities combined.
We're trying to draw one of the
They
Vanguard
constructed
class.
a highway with but a single structure, a massive pavilion made of granite and black marble transported from Holy Terror. Along the roadway, poles adorned with the skulls of orc leaders were erected, while torches of considerable size lit the highway in the blue-white flame of Prometheum. And then the greatest parade thundered forth. Troops were summoned from across the Imperium. Endless ranks of Imperial regiments reached the horizon. Behind them rose the legions of Titans, and above them Aeronautica Imperialis solemnly flew by. The battle participants were awarded an onyx golden triumph stripe for their uniforms, signifying endless valor and loyalty. These strips were forged from bolt gun casings gathered on the battlefield. Then came the legions of Astartes. A total of 14 legions and 9 Primarchs participated in the parade. Each son of the Emperor was accompanied by a circle of warriors closest to the Primarchs. Such elite guards were created in the legions, following the example of the Justerin of the Lunar Wolves. After the parade and ceremonial speeches, the Emperor spoke. He once again acknowledged the valor and tactical genius of Horus. But then something happened that no one could have anticipated.
Oh boy.
In full hearing, the Emperor announced that he was leaving the Great Crusade and returning to Terra to undertake a secret project for the benefit of all mankind. He appointed Horus as his successor, declaring his new title War Master. Now Horus would lead the ships of the Crusade further, and the rest were to serve him as if the Emperor himself spoke through the Primarch. The crowd erupted in ovations, yet Horus's brothers darkened. They were, of course, happy for Horus's recognition of valor, but now he was no longer a brother to them. Previously he was first among equals, but now he had risen above them. What saddened them most was the departure of the Emperor to Terra. It seemed to them that the father had abandoned them, that they had completed their work, and now they were just unnecessary tools for him.
Come on.
And at that moment, the soft voices of the Chaos Gods echoed in the minds of each of the Primarchs. They sought to turn grievance and perplexity into something far more
amplify it.
After
it's like not to get weird, another thing with like real life, right? Where like people take a little negative thing and then super blow it up. Just make it real big so it's something they can feel really shite about. He said he was going to go better mankind on some secret project, man. Come on.
After the parade, Horus also received a proposition from the Emperor to rename his legion the Sons of Horus, to once more highlight their merits. However, the Primarch declined. True, as time passed, Horus came to understand that he was drifting away from his brothers, losing their respect among them. And in a lengthy conversation with Sanguinius, Horus eventually decided to rename his legion. He changed the heraldry and colours of the armour. Now, on the battlefield, the legionnaires extolled not only the Emperor, but also their Primarch. Who knows, perhaps at that moment Horus did harbour ambitions to attain his father's power and possibly surpass him, a fertile ground of the mind for destructive forces. The Emperor undoubtedly was an extraordinary being, primarily due to his incredible psychic powers. And of course, he knew about the existence of other individuals sensitive to warp energy, and with capabilities to utilize it. Some of the psychers were vitally necessary for the Imperium, such as navigators and astropaths. However, as the Great Crusade progressed...
Yeah, I didn't realize until I was like at the end of Space Marines 2 that I had played a lot of Warhammer growing up and just never thought to get into the lore at all. I never played the board game or painted any miniatures. But I was playing Fire Warrior when I was a kid. Dark Tide was fun, and Vermintide. Those are both fun games. I've played Tacticus on mobile here and there because I like turn-based stuff on mobile. I don't really like playing turn-based on console.
Authorized sorcerers were found more frequently. The Psyker gene propagated more quickly among newborns, and this became a problem.
Tensei.
The Crusade forces discovered entire planets mostly populated by sorcerers who had been sweetly corrupted by the gods of chaos. Even among the Space Marines, the number of psychers was on the rise, and thus legionnaires with such abilities either were forbidden to use them or faced persecution, and sometimes even worse. Others, such as Magnus the Red, Sanguinius and Jagatai Khan, seeing the potential in such unique warriors, organized librarius in their legions, creating also mind training programs for more effective use of psi energy in combat and for greater protection against the destructive forces. They even convinced the Emperor to approve such an experiment, and having obtained his consent, they indeed gained a powerfully augmented force for their legions. Magnus and his legion, the Thousand Sons, where everyone was skilled
pretty easy looking to draw,
naturally suffered the most from their brothers' distrust. The main opponents of sorcery from the Emperor's forces even refused to conduct joint combat actions side by side with the Legion of the Crimson King. And Magnus himself was repeatedly openly accused of using dark magic and forbidden rituals. The fiercest opponents were Leman Russ, who saw in sorcerous tricks only danger and dishonor, and Mortarion, who still bore the scars from the giants, the sorcerers of his home planet. At some point the tension in the Imperium reached its peak and even threatened with a schism. The Emperor was concerned about the accusations towards Magnus and the quarrel between the Primarchs, as well as the potential danger that could arise from the librarians. He understood that before he could calmly return to Terra after the Ullanor triumph, this problem needed to be resolved once and for all. Therefore, he ordered the gathering the Council of Nicaea, to which all Primarchs were invited, some librarians of their legions, the Lords of Mars, as well as the main advisors of the Emperor. The gathered split into those who defended Psychers and those who despised it. The Emperor himself sat high as the judge of the entire process. The main accusers were the Sisters of Silence, a special order consisting of female untouchables. Untouchables were called people whose souls had no reflection in the warp. Even being near them caused unpleasant sensations in ordinary people, and for Psychers, and especially the demons of the Immaterium, they caused incredible pain. The Sisters of Silence reminded those gathered of the horrors of sorcery, the great risk of succumbing to chaos, the terrible deeds performed by corrupted sorcerers during the Age of Strife, mutants, and the spawn of the warp that could inadvertently be summoned by Psychers. On the defense side, Primarch Magnus took the floor. His main argument was that knowledge itself could not be inherently good or evil. Its use depends solely on the intentions of the person who acquired it.
That's interesting.
It is also necessary to master this knowledge rather than be led by it. With all the eloquence available to a Primarch, Magnus argued that his entire legion had their powers under full control and that their research into sorcery served the good of the Imperium. Magnus's compelling speech captivated many listeners, and opinions were once again divided. No one could deny the danger that sorcerers posed and the crimes they had already committed, but nor could anyone refute the words of the Crimson King. The tension among those gathered once again escalated. At this moment, 12 librarians from different legions approached the Emperor's
Lightyear helmet too. Look at him.
Speaking was one of them, a librarian of the White Scars Legion named Targutai Yesugai. He spoke of how a Psyker's mind is like the talent or body of an athlete, and it needs to be perfected and trained. A Psyker, in and of itself, cannot inherently carry the destructive corruption of chaos. Therefore, with proper control and training, the Imperium could gain many most powerful warriors, including among the Astartes.
It sounds like something
After all the hearings, the opposing sides even began to reach compromises. However, at that moment, the Emperor announced that the Council of Nicaea was convened not only to regulate the matters of Psychers, it was also a trial against Magnus the Red. He was to answer for numerous charges of sorcery and spreading of forbidden knowledge within his and other legions through the core of Librarius. There were many witnesses to the use of Magnus and the Thousand Sons sorcery, so it was difficult to deny his guilt. The Emperor was very angry with his son, as Magnus was the only one to whom he had confided all the dangers and secrets of the warp, and learning that even after his warnings, Magnus still reached for forbidden knowledge, the Emperor was beside himself. Their heated dispute would enter history and be recorded in the Grimoire Hereticus. In the end,
heretic.
the Emperor pronounced the verdict.
The
severity was likely fueled by his anger at Magnus, but the Emperor's decision was irrefutable. According to the Edict of Nicaea, the legions of the Astartes were forbidden from using librarians. The librarius were to be disbanded, and the gifted Astartes were to be transferred to regular squads, with a prohibition on sorcery. Additionally, a new position was introduced into the legions. Chaplain, and the chaplain was to ensure the purity of the legion's thoughts and adherence to
He was a cool
imperial
character
truth.
in the
The
game.
only exceptions for psyker use within the legions were astropaths and navigators. Magnus was also forbidden from using his powers.
What were they called?
Truth was to ensure the purity was introduced into the legions. Chaplain, and the chaplain was to ensure the purity of the legion's thoughts and adherence to imperial truth. The only exceptions for psyker use within the legions were astropaths and navigators. Magnus was also forbidden from using his powers. If you engage with the warp, Magnus, I will come and destroy you. The name of your legion will be erased from the imperial records forever. Thus spoke the Emperor. This phrase, by the way...
See, that's a mistake. You keep them there. That way shit like this doesn't happen again. It's also a double-edged sword, because if you keep them there, people will read them, and you will get your bits of people who are like, oh, well, if I try it in secret, you know what I'm saying?
To hint at
Boom.
the fates of the 2nd and 11th
Warp
legions.
infection.
The malice and offence Magnus felt cannot be fully conveyed. His main objective was the pursuit of knowledge for a better future, and sorcery made his legion unique. It was their primary weapon.
Elden Ring boss right
With
there.
bitterness in his heart, he obeyed the father's prohibition. Thus, the Council of Nicaea concluded. But did the sons heed their father's warning, who threatened them with death and anathema for disobedience? Many did, especially the opponents of warp forces. However, Magnus's most fervent opponent of sorcery, Leman Russ, kept psykers in his legion, firmly believing they drew their power not from the Immaterium, but from the depths of their homeworld Fenris. Alfarius simply ignored the ban, and Magnus continued to explore the mysteries of the warp, only now even more covertly than before.
Yeah.
And in times of need, many other legions did not disdain to allow their librarians to summon their powers once more. Future events would yet show the utter dubiousness of the Emperor's prohibition, for bans do not work if one betrays him.
This is a really scribbly version of a
The Emperor left
Marine.
his sons after the victory at Olenna and went to Terra. He left Horus as his deputy, who received the title of War Master, but this likely left Horus's soul vulnerable to the dark gods. Each Primarch felt abandoned by the father, but Horus, being the very first found Primarch, felt it more acutely than others.
I like that.
He saw his new title only as a
booky.
consolation for the fact that the father had abandoned him. Commanding the forces of the Crusade, Horus found less and less meaning in the victories and heroic sacrifices of his soldiers. It seemed to him as if the Emperor suddenly did not care at all about his feats. His paranoia also grew, believing his brothers were envious
Is he a
of
crybaby?
him, disrespecting him, laughing at his command and orders, twisting them at their whim. Those Primarchs who rivaled each other started to openly conflict, and Horus could not reconcile them as the Emperor would have. This struck at the War Master's self-esteem and authority.
He might be a baby.
But the last straw was the creation of the Council of Terra, which attempted to perform the duties of the Emperor as ruler, meaning the Primarchs had to submit to mere mortals. Obsessive thoughts arose in his head that his father was to blame for all the arising difficulties. He left his children in the cold void of space.
Oh boy.
The father, who seemed to have deliberately placed Horus at the head of the campaign, to watch his failures. Soon Horus ceased attempts to reconcile his brothers.
That guy looks nice.
He surrounded himself with those Primarchs who unquestioningly obeyed him, or at least carried out his orders swiftly and accurately. And in order to calm his disappointment and paranoia, Horus tried to focus on conquering the galaxy for mankind. However, the seeds of betrayal had already been sown. All that remained was for them to germinate, and soon the servants of ruinous powers were granted the opportunity to assist in this process. Once, Horus's fleet encountered a Xenos race known as the Interrex. They were a humanoid race, similar to humans, highly advanced in technology, surpassing that of the Imperium. Unlike humans, the Interrex sought to first establish friendship when encountering other races, and one race, the Kinnebrach, even became firmly integrated into their community. This was a very ancient and technologically advanced simian people. Together, the union of these two
races
inhabited several dozen
40K
stars.
are awesome too, like the
The
Tau.
Interrex did not wish for contact
like
with
in
the
that
Imperium.
game Fire Warrior.
They dedicated their lives to the war against chaos and believed that Horus's fleet could be under the influence of ruinous powers. Therefore, Horus's landing on the world of Zenobia for negotiations was seen as an invasion. The fact was that Zenobia housed a museum of various weapons, and after Horus's landing, a very valuable artifact disappeared. It was a Kinebrach anatheme sword linked to the chaos god Nurgle. No one would ever find out that the blade was stolen by Erebus, a chaplain of the Word-Bearers Legion, who by that time was already a secret servant of the Dark Gods, as was his Primarch Lorgar, who had devised this plan. Conflict flared between Horus's forces and the Xenos, escalating into warfare. This led to the downfall of the Interrex race. Sometime later, on the feral world of Davin, in the midst of battle with the local insurrectionist humans, Horus was treacherously wounded by an anatheme. The strike was delivered by Yugen Temba, the former governor of the colony on Davin, seduced by chaos and secretly given the blade by Erebus.
And not try to do it shot
Following
for shot.
the advice of the same Erebus, the dying Primarch was taken to the local priests of the Serpent Lodge. The plan of the Chaos Gods was unfolding perfectly. A ritual was performed over Horus, during which Erebus entered the mind of the Primarch. He told him about the Immaterium, about the true goals of the Dark Gods, and about the arrogance of the Emperor. He showed Horus visions of the future. The Emperor is worshipped as a god, while the Primarchs, no longer needed, have vanished. But Horus was most horrified by the fact that the Emperor used the powers of the warp to create the Primarchs. All these visions strengthened his hatred for his father. The gods of chaos made Horus an offer. He would deliver the Emperor to them, and the Primarch himself would take his place. But then, suddenly, ignoring the Edict of Nicaea, Magnus broke into Horus's mind. He tried to convince his brother not to believe the deceitful words of the traitor Erebus, and to maintain faith in their father's plans. But it was already too late. "Horus, I beg you!" exclaimed Magnus, but his voice was already fading, and his form trembled and paled. "You cannot do this, or everything we have fought for will turn to dust. You will not make this dreadful step." "Is it so dreadful?" scoffed Erebus. "It's but a small favour. Hand over the Emperor to the gods of the warp, and you will gain boundless power. I have already mentioned that they are utterly indifferent to the material world, and their offer still stands.
AI anymore.
The galaxy will be yours, and you shall become the new ruler of humanity." "Enough!"
Like, here he goes again.
Horus, and all around fell silent. "I have made my choice." Soon Horus awoke. To the surprise of his legionnaires, the Primarch had undergone a radical change. Enraged by the Dictator Father's goals, who aspired only for divinity, Horus began to gather allies. He turned to the closest of his brethren. The first to side with him were Angron.
See, the thing with stories like this is the villain doesn't understand. They're doing exactly the thing that the person they don't like is doing, or that they did. And then that's the reason why they don't like them. They're doing the exact same thing. He doesn't like that his father used the warp to get this power and become this great figure that he is. And he's despising him. He's like, yo, you lied to us. You used this evil power. He's like, I'm going to use this evil power, do the same thing you did, and just be a fucking asshole about it. Like, you're doing the same thing.
Who harbored resentment towards the father. Mortarion, who compared the father's actions to the monsters of Barbarous, and picking up on Horus's contempt for the Emperor. Then Fulgrim joined, who by that moment had already felt the touch of chaos after finding the lair blade.
This guy likes caviar.
This blade belonged to a race of serpent-like beings the Emperor's sons had fought against, and contained within it a powerful demon of Slanesh. Horus only fanned the flames of heresy in his brother's heart. Later, Perturabo, who feuded with Rogel Dawn, Conrad Kurz, who foresaw a dark future, and Alpharius Omegon, whose goals were unknown to anyone, joined Horus. And of course Lorgar, as the first traitor Primarch, followed the warrior. Also joining Horus was the Fabricator General of Mars, along with a large portion of the Mechanicus,
These guys are cool with the
which became
skulls.
the Dark Mechanicus, and a significant part of the fleet and divisions of the Imperial Army. For the time being, the heretics did not act openly. They were amassing strength, devising plans, and gathering followers.
I think it's
Only
interesting.
Magnus
It's an
knew of
interesting
the
choice.
looming tragedy.
The
Despite his father's strict prohibition, Magnus once again decided to use sorcery to warn the Emperor of the warrior's
sorcerers
betrayal.
look like pharaohs, dude.
Performing an incredibly complex ritual, Magnus's soul burst from his body and rushed towards Terra. But almost reaching his goal, Magnus's spirit crashed into a psychic barrier. Eager to convey the crucial message to his father, Magnus broke through the barrier, destroying it and shattering his soul into fragments, nevertheless reaching the Emperor's chambers. A massive red figure, engulfed in flame, appeared in the doorway. It burst into the hall, scattering flames. The being, made of flowing streams of light and stellar matter, radiated a brightness that blinded all around. And at the sight of its numerous eyes, none could rid themselves of the awareness of their own mortality. Such a terrifying vision had never been seen before, and the true heart of this being was so mighty that it beat only in specially created flesh. Only the Emperor recognized the magnificent angel, and recognizing it was greatly saddened. "Magnus," he said. "Father," Magnus responded.
"What's your problem, dude?"
Their thoughts met, and in that moment of close contact, the galaxy changed forever. Only then did the Crimson King realize what he had wrought. With his thoughtless action, he had destroyed the protection that the Emperor had been building for many years. Protection that he had erected for his secret project. The Emperor had planned to utilize the Eldar Webway for moving humanity across the galaxy without fear of being devoured by warp entities.
This guy was going to use...
demons were beginning to infiltrate the webway, and one of the web's exits was none other than the throne room on Terra.
This guy was going to use the internet.
Magnus himself had opened the doors to chaos right into the heart of the Imperium.
Warp-wide web, dude.
The Primarch of the Thousand Suns was in dismay and horror at what he had just done, understanding that retribution was inevitable.
Archmagus.
This meant that the wolves would be unleashed once again. Meanwhile, the traitor forces were planning a major strike against the loyalist forces, and few atrocities could compare with the massacre from the game. Magnus violated the Edict of Nicaea and, using sorcery, attempted to warn the Emperor about Horus's betrayal. Alas, Magnus did not realize the extent of the havoc his desperate attempt to help his father would cause. Passing through the psychic defenses of the Imperial Palace, Magnus's sorcery destroyed them, unleashing a cascade of disasters across Terra and opening warp storms around it. The Emperor's disappointment and anger knew no bounds. An edict was immediately issued, condemning Magnus the Red for violating the laws established at the Council of Nicaea. By the word and will of the Lord of Mankind, the Emperor of the Imperium of Man, this decree commands the bringing of Magnus, Primarch of the 15th Legion Astartes, to Terra, where he will stand before the imperial throne, to answer for his actions and the actions of his gene sons. Thus, Lemon Russ, Primarch of the 6th Legion Astartes, is tasked with delivering his brother, using any means he deems necessary, regardless of legal restrictions, permits, or the need to borrow means from others, even if he has to follow Magnus into the boundless void to the end of days. So it is written, and so it shall be.
Not so
the edict condemning Magnus and the Thousand Sons. The edict was immediately sent to the Primarch of the Space Wolves as well as to Horus. The Emperor hoped that the warrior might offer wise counsel.
That's what I call these.
It was also commanded to assemble an army that was to arrest Magnus and escort him to Terra, and if necessary, capture him by force. The lead commander of the prosecution forces was appointed to be Constantine Valdor, Captain General of the Custodes, one of the Emperor's closest advisors. Given that Terra...
The Custodes, that's the... What are these factions? That's the one Henry Cavill likes, man. He's probably going to put in the show that's in development.
That was the main fortress of the entire Imperium, with nearby Mars serving as the main forge of mankind's war machine. The force was quickly assembled. The army consisted of dozens of Terran auxiliary regiments and Imperial soldiers. It was also accompanied by the Sisters of Silence, the Imperium's most potent weapon against psychers, and the newly formed
Henry Cavill's doing the show, and he's a fan of the Custodes. That means the Silent Sisters are gonna probably end up in there somehow, and there's your representation. So everyone can stop bitching about them. Just let them make the show.
a sublegion of Warlord and Emperor-class Titans. It
What
was
is
unique
that?
for wielding the incredibly rare Psi Titans, war machines under the control of eternally suffering Psykers, allowing the main Titan operator to utilize some warp energy abilities. Once
Whoa.
everything was ready, the prosecutorial force set off for the planet Prospero. But their advance was slowed
If I was a
by warp
psyker,
storms
and
around
my hell
Terra.
would be to operate a
At
giant
that time,
Titan
upon
mech.
receiving the summons from the Emperor,
Kill me, bro.
Lehman Russ was assisting the Imperium's army with another Xenos threat.
Oh,
It is
shit.
recorded that upon receiving the order from the Emperor, Lehman Russ swiftly prepared a decisive attack at the heart of the enemy forces and crushed them. However, afterwards, he and his legion immediately retreated and headed for the Space Wolves' homeworld of Fenris to prepare for the offensive. It is difficult to say whether such fervour was due to his loyalty to the Emperor, or if the Wolf King was driven by rage and malice towards his brother, whom Lemon Russ had never trusted. Upon arriving at his homeland, Lehman Russ called all the great companies of his legion that were relatively close to their star system. The Wolf King spent about a month gathering the forces of his legion, and without waiting for the full assembly set out to meet Valdor with 50,000 space marines. Their meeting place was the Beta Garman system. However, due to the warp storms at Terra and the relative proximity of Fenris to this system, the Space Wolves arrived at the meeting place a month and a half earlier than Valdor's forces. There, Lehman Russ was greeted by the forces that responded to the call of his legion and a part of the forces of Sons of Horus. The main task of the 16th Legion was to deliver messages to Lehman Russ from the War Master. It is unknown what exactly Horus conveyed to his brother, but afterwards Russ intended to not only capture Magnus but also to execute him, even though this was not a directive from the father. For these purposes, Horus allocated 5,000 of his legionaries and 12 Titans to assist Lehman Russ. When a month and a half later, the prosecutorial force from Terra arrived at Beta Garman,
I got the base
a
down.
tense meeting between Russ and Valdor took
I don't want to
place.
fudge it anymore.
Both men deeply respected each other, but Valdor was firmly intended to carry out the Emperor's order as precisely as possible, whereas Russ believed that killing the sorcerer traitor would better serve the Imperium. Ultimately, Valdor agreed with Lehman Russ, but the disagreements between them continued
I didn't even draw
during
hands.
the war. It took some more time before the prosecutorial force finally set off for Prospero. During preparation, strategies for uniting such spiritually different forces were developed, and Russ demanded a careful study of the planet and its military fortifications. Advancing towards Magnus's planet, the prosecutorial force captured space stations belonging to the Thousand Suns, though all were found empty. Also, no ships of the Sorcerer Legion were encountered on their path. It turned out that Magnus had long known about the army's approach, but instead of ordering the fortification of his system's borders, or even strengthening the planet's defense, Magnus the Red, on the contrary, dispersed his fleet's forces as far apart from each other as possible.
What an idiot.
Although he had gathered the bulk of his legion on Prospero, the Thousand Suns were unaware of the impending invasion until the last moment. Magnus had completely cut off any means of communication with the rest of the Imperium, including psychic ones.
What a jerk.
Yet even without the preparation of defences, Tizca, the capital and the only major city on Prospero, was very well fortified. On one side, there were impassable jungles inhabited by dangerous predators, among which the most bizarre and deadly were the invisible swarms of psychic parasites.
Whoa.
On another side, the capital was surrounded by mountains, which were fortified with numerous bunkers and defensive laser installations. On a third side, the city was washed by the sea. And finally, on the fourth side,
like this.
100-meter wall was erected,
make it look
protected
stupid. I'm
by
gonna get
Geller
mad about
fields,
having did
and the
this.
city itself was covered by a psychic
But I already
shield,
started.
its strength comparable to the void shields
Whoops.
usually placed on space cruisers. Mechanicum forges on the planet could also provide substantial help in defense. The challenging landscape for landing, disagreements in command, and the accusatory force's unpreparedness for a prolonged siege. Originally, this force was just an honor guard for the arrest and escort of Magnus. All contributed to significant difficulties in the upcoming siege. It remains unclear why Magnus deliberately scattered his fleet across the system and did not warn his legion about the attack. Some believe it was merely an expression of pride.
He's doing a lot of experimenting.
Others talk about an attempt at redemption, while some whisper about the mysterious plans of the dark gods that whispered to Magnus. For Russ and Valdor, it remained a mystery. Within a few hours, the accusatory force had completely seized the orbital space around Prospero, meeting almost no resistance. The destruction and capture of orbital stations caused panic among the planet's population, which was further exacerbated by the subsequent orbital bombardment. However, Russ did not want to simply subject Prospero to exterminatus from orbit. He wanted to give Magnus a chance to explain and try to justify himself. The Emperor's decree and demand for Magnus to surrender were broadcasted to the planet. But from the surface came neither threats of resistance nor pleas for mercy. Nothing at all. Russ was offended by his brother's silence, and despite Valdor's pleas to allow more time for a response, he ordered a mass bombardment.
Damn.
Prospero was set ablaze. An hour after bombarding the planet, all that remained of its surface was ash. Only the capital managed to survive, shielded by a psychic shield. For Valdor and Russ, the true nature of such protection around the capital was revealed only then, meaning Magnus had once again brazenly violated the Edict of Nicaea and betrayed the Emperor's trust. The siege preparations began. Although the capital survived the bomb strikes, the defensive line in the mountains around Tizca was destroyed, and the outskirts of the city were buried under stones. The sea washing the capital's other side had almost completely evaporated, hitting the shoreline with a wave of steam. Also, Tizca lost its allies in the form of the Mechanicum. Their forge had been destroyed, including the deep underground complexes. Leman Russ swore an oath that his warriors would be the first to wage war on this planet, and then requested allied forces to stand in reserve. He himself began preparing his legion for the siege. Descending in drop pods to the coastline of Tizca, the Space Wolves broke the aerial defense of Prospero. The first to set foot on the ground was Leman Russ himself, fulfilling his oath. Emitting an inhuman roar, signaling the command to attack, the Wolf King led his sons into battle. The wolves immediately encountered resistance from Tizca's elite guard. But what could a mere guardsman do against the bestial fury of the Emperor's wildest legion? Surprising to the attackers was the fact that they faced only the regular army. The Thousand Sons Legion and their Primarch had yet to show themselves. At this time, the Prospero army tried to sell their lives dearly, exhibiting acts of heroism in each encounter. However, the air forces were entirely annihilated, and only a few fortified positions of infantry remained, desperately resisting the deadly wave of invaders. Key moments of the siege's first phase included the destruction of the fortress of the Acropolis Magna. Leman Russ's force captured the entire region of Old Tizca and continued its advance. The wolves were unleashed, and now nothing could halt their advance. Any pleas for a ceasefire from the citizens were ignored. Russ also disregarded Valdor's suggestion to finally release the reserves into battle. The Wolf King aimed to draw out Magnus's legion and settle scores personally. As provocation, a huge stone statue
It's crazy
of the
is
Crimson
this theme
King
of like
destroyed.
wolves, because there's like
Finally, as the attack moved deeper
I'm not
into
gonna
the city,
say it, that's a spoiler.
bolts of bolter fire and
Spoiler
flashes
warning.
of sorcerous projectiles
Anyone
swept
watching this?
through the ranks of the 6th Legion. The Thousand Sons responded to the
Here it
wolf's
comes.
call. Thanks to their magical talents, Magnus's
There's a
legion
giant warp
halted the
demon
wolves' advance,
in the end of the
effectively
Space
repelling their
Marines 2
attacks and inflicting
campaign.
significant damage.
What's with the
Leman
wolves?
Russ,
That's what I wanna
unwilling
know.
to lose the initiative, ordered his forces to hold their positions and finally called in the reserves. The Space Wolves' reserves were ordered to continue moving towards the center of Tizca and, if possible, bypass the enemy forces. Russ hoped he had already engaged the enemy's main forces in battle, but it turned out that the Wolf King had underestimated the situation. By this point, the Thousand Sons had long since abandoned any hope of redemption and were summoning ever more terrifying and destructive spells.
What the heck?
Seeing that the wolves'
Learn your
attack was
lesson,
faltering, Constantin Valdor directed his forces to assist. He called in all remaining Imperial forces in orbit, reinforcing the attacking squads and destroying the remaining pockets of resistance in the Wolf Legion's rear. The main target of the attack was the capture of the spires located at the city's heart. The Thousand Sons, no longer bound by any prohibitions, conducted secret rituals and sacrifices to discern the invaders' plans and use the darkest and most forbidden spells. Even the custodians, led by Valdor, were astounded by the incredible force that descended upon the loyalist
Is that
forces.
how they call them? Custodians?
The entire force of the prosecution army was shaken by how far the sons of Magnus had fallen. Russ and his legion denounced the Thousand Sons as their brothers and swore to erase the city and its inhabitants to dust, sparing no one. Valdor was also determined to the utmost. He gathered under his command all the Sisters of Silence, which became the decisive action, as across all fronts the Thousand Sons successfully stopped the attack of the Loyalists. Even the Wolf King could not advance further. However, thanks to the devastating effect that the Sisters of Silence had on the psykers of the Thousand Sons, Valdor managed to successfully break through the traitor's defense. At that moment, Tizca turned into a real hell. A warp storm began over the planet. Prospero's moon covered the sun. The warp storm gradually descended on the capital,
like From
consuming
Software
its central
plus
part.
whoever helped put
Everything
this Warhammer
found
stuff
itself
together.
on the edge of the warp storm was
Saber
consumed by
Interactive.
it. Yet inside, it was still possible to be. It was there that the main forces of Leman Russ and Valdor continued to press on the Legion of the Thousand Sons. Magnus's legion retreated to the central spire, where the Crimson King had been throughout the siege. And the Loyalist forces now had to also fend off the spawns of the Immaterium that appeared in the maelstrom of dark warp energy.
Wow,
Finally, when the forces of the Imperium surrounded the remnants of the Thousand Sons' defenders, the Crimson King himself appeared on the battlefield. The brother Primarchs immediately engaged in combat, and Valdor ordered Russ's legion and his troops to continue the offensive,
He looks like the guy
not
from
interfering
Mortal
with the
Kombat.
brothers' duel.
What's his name?
Under the influence of warp energy, both the Thousand Sons and the Space Wolves felt the touch of curses that these legions harbored. The curse of the flesh turned Magnus's sorcerers into terrible monsters, and Russ's warriors were enveloped by the curse of the Wulfen, turning them into huge semi-wild werewolves. Therefore, the last battle was even more fierce than the previous conflict in Tizca. Finally, Valdor's forces pushed the Thousand Sons inside the spire itself, which also sheltered the civilian population. Valdor's order was simple. Everything inside the spire must die. At that moment, Russ had the upper hand over his brother, breaking his back over his knee and raising his weapon over his head for the final blow.
Jeez.
However, before the blow was struck and Valdor's warriors approached the spire, a flash of incredibly bright light enveloped the central building, around which a magical whirlwind spun. Inhuman laughter was heard. Terrible demons materialized on the battlefield and began to destroy the blinded forces of the Imperium. The space around began to go mad. It seemed as if Magnus's last spell destroyed the very concept of reality.
Yeah.
And then the light disappeared, as did the spire, as did the Crimson King. In despair, Magnus gave himself over to the will of Tzeentch, the chaotic god of change, knowledge, and sorcery. The war was over. The Emperor's forces won, paying a very high price for it. Leman Russ had defeated his brother, but he did not keep his vow to kill him. The Empire lost an entire legion of Space Marines, and as it would turn out in the future, also gained itself a formidable enemy. For the first time, the Space Marines shed the blood of their brothers in open confrontation. Leman Russ was deeply depressed by all this, and even solemn congratulations from Horus did not soothe him. What irony, to receive congratulations from one who secretly rejoiced at the successful fulfillment of his plans and the plans of the Dark Gods. The Wolf King has yet to learn about the great slaughter that was planned by the War Master, Istvan III. This planet will become the springboard for Horus's decisive actions and the rest of the heretics, but first it's worth telling about its conquest.
Yeah.
Istvan III is located in the Ultima Segmentum.
So, I don't like the way this drawing came out, but it looks like a vanguard. Just a quick freaking put together doodle with some ink. What do you think? What do you guys think? How long did that take? I don't know. I'll put it on my Instagram. Let's keep going.
Far from terror and the central systems, this world was inhabited by a technologically advanced society that settled here during the times of colonization and the dark age of technology. The residents of Istvan survived the age of strife almost unscathed. After reconnaissance conducted by the Empire, it was clear that a planet with such a large population and such development simply had to be brought back under its fold. Unfortunately, diplomatic missions failed. The inhabitants of Istvan were too independent and self-sufficient. Moreover, they preached a local religion which was contrary to the imperial truths. Therefore, to resolve the looming conflict, it was decided to send the Raven Guard Legion, led by their Primarch Corvus Corax. The planet fell in one night. The Raven Guard's pinpoint strike beheaded the government, and the protests were quelled. The reports of the Space Marines mention nothing unusual, except for the mention of many cults. Is that why those helmets exist?
Dude,
nevertheless,
so
the world
ugly.
of Istvan III rejoined the rest of humanity.
There it is.
The ruined palace was rebuilt according to imperial canons, networks of bunkers and tunnels were organized for the imperial garrison, and the planetary defense system was completely updated, and a spaceport was constructed.
Can I get package? What is
As the governing figure, Vardus Praal, a former major of the Imperial Army and a politician from the Ultima Segmentum, was appointed planetary governor. Believing that all necessary preparations had been made, the Crusade moved on, leaving the remote planet to develop on its own. This was the beginning of the end. Over time, communication with Istvan became increasingly difficult. Messages from astropaths had to be passed through third and fourth hands due to the great distance. Messages came more and more infrequently, and the warp storms that appeared around the planet further limited Istvan's communication with the rest of the Empire. From the few messages that got through, it was understood that there were uprisings on the planet, led by a cult known as the Warsinger. 6 years after Istvan's capture, one of the Death Guard cruisers picked up a weak astropathic signal. From it became known about a bloody massacre across the planet. Vardus Praal betrayed the trust of the Empire and descended into heresy, leading the Warsinger cult. Ignoring such dire news from a planet with a population of tens of millions was not an option.
There's an artist named Frank Cho.
And it fell to Horus to once again bring Istvan back to the Imperium. He swore to make Istvan a bloody example of what would happen to traitors to the light of the Emperor. However, few knew that Horus first saw the situation as an opportunity to strike a treacherous blow to the Imperium himself. For the assault on the planet, Horus called those who had already embraced his dark side. The Death Guard, World Eaters, and Emperor's Children answered the call,
as a team,
along with elements of Horus's own legion. The Death Guard and World Eaters were personally led by their Primarchs. Meanwhile, the War Master ordered the legions of the Dark Angels, Ultramarines, and Blood Angels
from everyone that's
to
playing
venture
it,
to
not
the farthest reaches of the
main
galaxy,
one class,
thereby drawing away the most powerful of the loyal legions from himself. The other
but I say to that, don't tell me how to play shit, bruh.
But in Prospero, brother went against brother. A plan of attack was devised in the shortest possible time by the commanders of the gathered legions.
Play Vanguard?
It is important to note that Fulgrim did not reach Istvan in time, so the position of commander of the Emperor's Children was taken by Lord Commander Eidolon, one of the Primarch of the Third Legion's closest Astartes.
I have a crew
According
in the
plan,
Discord
the Death Guard landed near the capital of
Istvan. We should be able to
Istvan,
gather
supported by a large amount of heavy machinery,
guys, however
as
many
well
it is
as
for
Imperial Army
PvP
forces
online.
and Titans that accompanied the Astartes legions. Meanwhile, the Emperor's Children made a drop assault on the main palace and stormed it. They were covered by the World Eaters, who were to hold back the flow of cultists approaching the palace. Sons of Horus, in turn, would storm the temple areas which had been rebuilt and heavily fortified by the heretics. The sky above Istvan opened up, releasing hundreds of drop pods from the clouds. A steel rain covered the city, heralding its imminent demise. However, the War Master and the other commanders could not have anticipated that the cultists could put up a worthy resistance. The attack proceeded slower and was more difficult than initially planned, all because of the large number of psycho-sorcerers amongst the heretics.
Unthinkable when it comes
These
to
sorcerers possessed unnaturally loud voices, their screams driving mad and even warping the armor and bones of the Astartes. Regular cultists were driven into such a frenzied rage that they charged at the Space Marines en masse with bare hands, blocking streets with their own bodies. But the legions Astartes knew no fear and staunchly held back the onslaught of mad fanatics. At this time, the Emperor's children carried out a perfect landing in the palace, bypassing all air defense systems. Advancing through the vast halls, the Third Legion finally found the head of the traitors, Governor Vadus Pral. He was clad in strange armor and was armed with a monstrous psychosonic weapon, but was nevertheless slain by the best swordsman of the Emperor's children, Lucius. Simultaneously, Horus's sons, led by Gaviel Loken, stormed the temple fortress and slaughtered all the war singers.
Holy
shit. Though they faced difficulties, victory was ultimately achieved. The Astartes rejoiced, having managed to overcome such fierce resistance from a formidable enemy in just a few hours. They were unaware that their joy was premature.
It is Space Marines 1.
Immediately following their victory, communication with the fleet was lost, and the Titans retreated beyond the city's boundaries. From orbit, bombs began to descend, within which lay one of the most dreadful weapons of the Imperium, the Life Eater virus, which in just a few hours could turn all organic life on a planet into decaying sludge. The entire planet, including its forests, oceans, and of course its population, was annihilated. Then, from aboard the Vengeful Spirit, the flagship of Horus, a single shot was fired. The sludge following the viral bombardment emitted copious amounts of highly flammable substance, and it took just one shot for the planet to ignite.
You set the
in an instant,
atmosphere ablaze,
before the fleet of Horus, it was as if a new sun had ignited, and just as swiftly it extinguished, leaving behind a lifeless boulder where a populated planet had stood mere hours before. Vaporized, rotting oceans transformed into stormy clouds. Gale-force winds of massive sandstorms spread the ash and still smouldering embers of the dead world. Horus had delivered his blow. He challenged the Emperor, sacrificing an entire world along with entire companies of the Master of Mankind's Angels of Death. However, Horus was unaware that even before the bombs fell, the Astartes on the surface of Istvan had been warned of the warrior's betrayal.
Oh, yeah.
Before the bombs were dropped, among those who remained in orbit, there was significant dissent against such a horrific decision. Nathaniel Garrow was among the chief dissenters. He gathered those who remained loyal to the Emperor, and together they seized the frigate Eisenstein. On it, Garrow hoped to reach Terra and inform the Emperor of his favoured son's dreadful betrayal. The Eisenstein barely survived the traitor's barrage and an emergency warp jump, but more of that tale another time. At that moment, one of the captains of the Emperor's children, named Saul Tarvitz, could not bear what Horus had planned. He hijacked the transport vessel Thunderhawk and flew to the ground forces. Just minutes before the bombs fell, Tarvitz managed to inform the ground forces of the impending exterminatus of the planet. Along with them, Tarvitz took refuge in numerous bunkers and fortifications that withstood both the viral bombardment and the scorching of the entire surface.
To have
as soon as the firestorm
like
died
a signet
down,
ring
Horus sent scouts
or
to the
stamp
planet's
of
surface.
what they use for those.
His surprise and fury were boundless
what looked
when
like
he learned that in the ruins of the
on their
capital,
armor, but
about 100,000 loyal Astartes had taken refuge. As soon as communication channels were restored, cries of sorrow and despair, of rage and malice, immediately emanated from the planet. The Space Marines had never before shed so much blood of other Space Marines, and thus they could not even conceive that their brothers would betray them so treacherously. But above all, they were plunged into despair by the betrayal of their own Primarchs.
Jeez,
the warrior was already ready to command a second
It's so metal. I can't believe I'm just getting into it now.
He could not leave any more survivors. But before Horus could issue the order, the World Eaters landed on the planet. They had already tasted the betrayal and blood of their brethren, and they thirsted for more. Angron met his loyal sons in one of the capital's charred squares. Without unnecessary words orders, or explanations, Angron and his legion lunged into an attack against their already half-mad brothers who had found refuge among the ruins. Such bestial fury had not been seen in the galaxy. Both sides were no longer Astartes. They were wild berserkers who desired only the blood of their enemy.
Jeez.
Although with losses, Angron's troops bravely eliminated the survivors, and the World Eaters rushed into the city streets seeking new victims. Due to raging internal fury, their legion became uncontrollable. Hence, Horus was compelled to support Angron's attack. Soon the forces of the traitors landed on Istvan. Horus harboured the hope of terminating the onslaught as swiftly as possible and proceeding to the next phase of the plan. However, the traitors' advance was stretched over several Terran months. Clever ambushes, skillfully fortified positions, a large number of bunkers and redoubts held by forces loyal to the Emperor enabled them to hold off the enemy for a long time and pay dearly for each of their lives.
Jeez,
ceaseless storms and tempests prevented the traitors from freely sending reinforcements and supplies to the needed areas.
One of the worlds in this
but after
universe
several
is
months of guerrilla warfare, the storm
world.
subsided. Horus dispatched all forces to the assault, including the Titans. Eidolon of the Emperor's children had all this time attempted to storm the main palace defended by his legion brother Saul Tarvitz. And throughout this time, Eidolon had failed to breach their defense. Not a single siege weapon could penetrate the palace's strongest walls. But when the Titans of the traitors combined into a monstrous salvo of their mighty weapons, the walls could not withstand and began to crumble. The surviving loyalists were finished off by the arriving World Eaters. A real hunt for small partisan squads began throughout the city, but the main forces of the loyalists were in the temple zone under the command of Loken. He and his followers from the Sons of Horus scraped off the paint and symbols from their armors, renouncing the Legion's name and returning to the old one, to the Lunar Wolves. They held back the enemies as best they could, but the forces of the traitors began to encircle them tightly. Ezekiel Abaddon, the foremost among the Sons of Horus, personally took charge of storming the Siren Hold, the main temple. With both fury and regret he sought out his brothers and killed them. But despite heavy fire from all sides and Abaddon's pursuit, about 100 Space Marines managed to break through and escape beyond the city's territory. Resistance was already futile. The Loyalist forces were defeated. But for every fallen Loyalist Space Marine, there were 2 to 3 betraying Astartes. Around this time, Fulgrim finally arrived at Horus's side with ominous news for the warrior. Horus certainly wished to track down every escaped Loyalist, but time was running out. He ordered a retreat, bombarding the capital with conventional bombs one last time, leveling it to the ground. Though it was a hard-won victory for the traitor forces, the resolution of the situation on Prospero and the havoc wrought by the word-bearers on Kulth only bolstered Horus's successes. The galaxy would burn, and Horus had just struck the first sparks. Immediately after the massacre in the drop zone on Istvan V, Horus began to implement his plan for the siege of Terra. However, the warlord understood that the Ultramar system, under the leadership of his brother Robut Gilliman, could prove to be the force that would almost immediately choke his uprising.
Yeah, dude.
The Empire within the Empire, as Ultramar was also called, needed to be weakened and ideally destroyed.
It's funny that it's called Ultramar,
that's why, even before the
and that's where like
the
Space
system,
Marines,
Horus had
you'll hear
tasked
them shout
Robut
that
Gilliman
for
with assembling troops for
and
a
Ultramar
campaign
just sounds
in a
like
sector
Ultramarine
far from
short.
Ultramar. The task of destroying the home of the 13th Legion was assigned to Lorgar and Angron. The former had long harboured a grudge against the 13th Legion for their humiliation on the planet of Monarchia, while the latter was simply mad with bloodlust, making Angron perfectly suited for a mission to sow terror and panic in the Ultramarines' home system. Both the World Eaters and the Word Bearers possessed impressive fleets, and together they formed an unbeatable armada. The beginning of their campaign could still be traced by the planets cleanly slaughtered and ships destroyed in space. The World Eaters' berserkers and a special unit of the Word Bearers called the Gal Vorbak Assault Troops, whose souls were possessed by warp demons, methodically exterminated the population of the planets near Ultramar. At first, few saw the sense in such widespread slaughter, but it later turned out to be a rather successful attempt to appease the dark gods. The advancement of the 12th and 17th Legion's armada went unnoticed for a long time due to warp storms engulfing the Imperium. The dying worlds had no way to send distress signals to neighboring Imperial planets, but the traitors could easily travel through the warp without fear of demon attacks. Soon, the heretics' fleet reached the planet Honorum, a beacon of Imperial civilization on the very edge of the galaxy. Beyond it lay only space known as the Ruin Storm, unexplored territory where warp storms constantly raged.
Wow.
Lorgar intended to use them to his advantage. Gonorum's defense was overwhelmed by the power of the traitors' fleets and a devastating assault on the main fortresses.
Ready for the pen?
The battle was so horrific that Gonorum could not fully recover even 10,000 years after the attack. Meanwhile, the traitors' fleet was able to freely move beyond known space, passing through the mightiest warp storms without hindrance. This was thanks to Erebus, the chief chaplain of the Word-Bearers, who by that time had renounced worship of the Emperor and become a dark apostle. His prayers to the ruinous powers and the millions of sacrifices earned the favor of chaos. Thus, almost nothing threatened his fleet during transitions through the warp.
Just a doodle.
Occasionally the fleet emerged from the Immaterium to raid the border worlds and passing trade fleets, but it never allowed itself to be distracted from the main goal. Using the knowledge found on the raided ships and within the minds of the pilots, the traitors were able to more precisely devise a strategy for the future attack.
Chill, man.
Finally arriving at the very heart of Ultramar, the Primarchs decided to disperse their forces throughout the system. Angron and Lorgar, with a small but formidable fragment of the fleet, set off to assault the military center of Guilliman's empire, the planet Armatura. Zadkiel, captain of the Word-Bearers, headed to the system's capital, the planet Macraga, while Lorgar's chief lieutenants, Cor Ferron...
Maybe we'll do some PvP, yeah? Because this is making me want to play the game. We'll do PvP for an hour. Yeah. Let me put the jams back on. Let me adjust some stuff. We'll do some PvP. Alright. Fixed it. Booyah. See? I'm good at this. This. Nice. Joining server. That's how Ghost would say it if he was playing some Warhammer right now. Vanguard me, baby. Operations is just co-op mode, but with people online. Oh, they look cool, man. Also, I don't know what difficulty this is on right now. I could be messing them up.
outpost to establish their fate. We must then infiltrate the refinery with demolitions deployed. Trigger detonation only when the main swarm is empty.
I feel like they're not going to explore the way they're supposed to.
Will coordinate our efforts over rocks.
Poor sightlines in this swamp.
Those guys explode. You get killed, dude. Majoris is the one I'm looking for. So my class is built to really take out some big guys.
The more of death, not abomination. Smells like fresh munitions.
Oh yeah.
What could be precisely what we need? Stockpile marked.
Is there friendly fire? Why did he say that?
Replenished and ready.
Yeah, I think they're playing together. Because he looked like the homie hesitated to grab the armor boost.
Stay there, fucking.
Yeah. We're doing good. These guys, they know what they're doing. None of them shot these glowy targets though. Could have blew that guy's head off.
Obtaining armaments.
Dropping down.
Alien bioform eliminated.
Oh man, what are we fighting? Oh. Get him off me, brothers!
I was about to do that.
Oh.
Keep them, bastard!
This game is really fun, man. It's even cooler that like they have this whole class system thing going. We helped him out because this guy's on the gun. Miners and Majoris. It tells you what's going on at the top there. You see that? It's just, everything's just so nice. The UI is nice. Everything's nice. It's not good to... So executions get your shields back. You should be letting one of your homies get the execute, you know?
Iron Hill ready.
You gotta shoot these things, dude.
Arming up.
No ammo? Yeah, they're not saving me any ammo. Good job. Real co-op.
I have eyes on the guard camp. No sentries posted.
View your packs, brothers.
You're here. Now what, Captain?
Talassa, you need to acquire the Astra Militarum demolition codes required to deploy and arm their ordnance. Source one from any soldier you see, alive or otherwise.
Reloading.
Our search was successful, Captain.
Proceed to the Prometheum refinery and complete the demolition preparations.
Yeah. Yeah. Holy shit.
Our brother is wounded. My side grows down, brother.
What needs reform?
Oh my god.
Swapping out magazine. Found medical supplies.
Was I getting shocked by my own shock grenade? Oh. He's absolutely going the right way. Dude, hold on, man. Let us loot. We know that's the right way, dude. We know it. This is called exploring. We're on a mission.
Smells like fresh munitions.
Yeah, man. Look at that. And I get dibs because this guy wanted to run off. You gotta prep for the next encounter. You know what I mean? How prepped is this guy gonna be now that he doesn't have four shield capability of the shields of 4? Oh shit, there's mad ammo. Oh, I just picked up some data, dude. Now I have to not die.
We cannot backtrack.
Hey, get. Ugh!
Unclog the walkway. Come out, calibrate.
Man, he messed me up.
We'll escape this group once again.
supposed to be able to spot those things before they attack like that. This guy just rushed in. What is he, Russian? What are you, Russian? Dude, are you Russian? Yep.
Go there, dig in. Fill your packs, brothers.
I like the way he talks. I like his accent. Usually, they come from every direction. Nothing's popping up right now. Homie's exploring. Good job, homie. Exploring. Sorry about the shitty quality. It's all I can afford. This is the only quality I can afford, man. Ooh, like megabits grow on trees. Aw. Wanted to bust a cap in his ass, dude.
Talasa, the Canians are running out of time. How close are you to the Promethean facility?
On location, Lieutenant.
You are making good time. We are going to need it.
Thanks, Lieutenant. What is this? Loadout change.
The other side.
Refilling magazines.
Keep your gun on the door.
Subterranean detonation in
The guy doesn't like I have better tactics than him. Look, he got mad.
That will do.
Use the codes to prime the bomb and finish its deployment into the crude Promethean well. Cautiously. You know what is good for you.
Skims, take some. Ready in payload delivery.
Lights of activation have been observed. Generators handling the machine.
Objective 1.
Name. Crane sequencing initialized. Delivering payload.
My gratitude, brother. Deploying shock grenade.
Man, I didn't mean to. I was trying to have fun with them a little bit. I like to play with my food a little bit. Murder them so fast.
Unauthorized personnel. Observe your duties.
I love this game, dude.
Push them back before they wreck the generator.
It's so fun. This game's so fun.
X-axis aligned by the Omnissiah's will.
I'm good on stims. Don't want to hog them all. You know what I mean? Nice. Didn't even have a chance.
Perform the necessary cleansing to resume operation.
Where's the new target?
Jam clear. Drive train restored.
Yeah, dude, look at that. They don't look around.
Swarm spotted. Headed toward generator 4. Generator 4 is suffering conditions. Without service, components are harmed.
Oh.
Take it or raise it.
Take that generator. I will cover you. Y-axis aligned. Margin of error 0.0 nanometers. Estimate your desired divine precision.
Now deploy the damn bomb.
Oh.
Demolition deployment sequence concluded. Nano errors logged under the undesired functional units.
This guy's hard.
It is an observation.
Oh my god. I'm all the way back in my seat right now. I need to reload.
Smells like fresh munitions. Take what you can carry. I shall return this favor.
Alright. Woo! That wasn't nearly as bad as my first run through that during the actual campaign. You gotta get in their face. Holy shit.
Guide the
South African? What is that accent? Anyone know? I'm gonna take it since I'm more in their face anyway, and these guys are both hanging back. So I'm gonna take that as my cue to continue being in their face. Yeah. Dora the Explorer over there, come on. Look at me making my jokes. I was just exploring with him a little bit ago.
Disappointing!
Yeah. I don't think there's anything up here, Falcon. Oh, maybe some crates and some ammo. Data slate? Oh, I already grabbed that.
We have arrived at Nozick's facility. Run distraction efforts as long as you can.
I will fight in the thick of these Xenos as long as we need it. Secure that.
I will hold you to that.
Whew.
We are committed to reject our fate. Begin, brothers. We hold this position until the main swarm is fully committed. Scream of blood. We have the high or a blood shower. Not high enough for your life.
A bloodbath or a blood shower. What a poet.
Grab your grenades. Brothers do not need thanks. We remember. Check that spot.
This position is defensible. Somewhat.
Found medical supplies. War gear there. Swapping out magazine.
Alright. These guys seem like they don't need my help. They're gonna win the game.
Ordnance on me. Good to go. Ammunition restocked.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, baby.
Brother. The enemy comes, Captain. I will see it, but we are prepared.
Dig in. We need that bomb triggered for optimal yield. Orbital scan estimates the bulk of the swarm will not be in position for a while yet. Keep your heads and get it done.
Ooh, I already have built the bomb on me. Okay.
Look at them clamor over each other for a peace. They are here! Clear the deck!
The bulk of the swarm is continuing along the protected path. Continue holding.
Get out of here. Ah! It was coming from ahead. head, man. Where's the Majoris that walked up here? Did you see him?
Enemies detected in the refinery.
Get out of here.
Halfway there, brothers. Keep it up.
Oh, flagging out a little bit.
Secure that equipment.
Oh, caught him by the back of the neck, dude.
Smells like fresh munitions. One down. Millions to go. Finish the race.
Do not let them pile up.
It's behind our front
Okay.
line.
The swarm has almost fully committed. Be ready for my mark.
Tactical ready. I am not target practice. What needs grappling? Ordnance on me. Stims, take some.
You are clear to detonate. Cook
Sweet.
those rotten bastards.
Cook him.
I am going to enjoy watching these tyrannies ride in the flames.
Straight here. Our armor's highly effective. Tentative bioscience at 90% unfallen.
Victory,
Swarm
man.
annihilation confirmed.
I gotta call it right after this.
Excellent work. Move to extract. Thunderhawk arriving at evac point.
So this guy's clearly been playing this mode.
Coming in hot. I shall return.
Extraction.
And that's why I love this game. It's like Helldivers with more to do, you know what I mean? The difficulty definitely I feel like is a lot higher in Helldivers because holy smokes, does that get insane. I want the skull helmet for real, dude. That thing looks so good. Small gains. Higher difficulties, you get like 300 per check mark. It's crazy. I killed it, dude. Mastery reached on both? Nice. Those are the two ones I want to masterwork from the get. I want to master Vanguard, the bolt pistol, and the Melta. Because the Melta you can use across almost all classes, plus the bolt pistol, so it's a good goal, I think. I think it's a good strategy. I work on other things in case people unaware of some of the stuff I get into. I'm getting into prop making right now, but not so much prop making, more like I'm putting together a whole costume, like a Mandalorian costume. I've been wanting to do that for years, but really couldn't in the past. Ooh. Let's edit it. Let's see what we got. Hey, we got our first mark. Some nades. Little bugs here and there. But otherwise, not a bad bit so far, right? Let's see. Girl, you better not. Maximum spread decreased 10%. Max damage increase against terminus enemies. This is an overall. We're gonna go with an overall pick there. Dude, once this is capped out, I can upgrade it because I got. How much does it cost? 1. Got the green currency there. This tab up here doesn't even tell you what this currency is. You gotta kind of figure it out. I think you also get the currencies from doing trials. What did I pick? Magazine size increase 15 mags. We go to all weapons 10% faster. Maybe I should have went with that, eh? We'll see. I like the deeper mag. It's definitely nice. And this costs. Perfect parry window increased by 50%. Yeah! Dude. Oh. I'm in love. I'm in love with this game. But yeah. Hey, let me show you. Look at this. Because I'm poor. I'm just kidding. Look at this. Isn't that nice? I picked this because I'm a big Star Wars nerd. I picked this because it has the flair of Darth Vader, who is like my favorite villain of all time, plus Mandalorian face. You know what I'm saying? I have a Boba Fett helmet that I had and it would fog up, so I got one with vents. Very tactical purchase, this version of this helmet. Put it on the stand there. But yeah, I'm going to paint that. Drawing, you know, stuff I get into. This has been very nice. I had a good time today. Definitely. Whoa. Let's do this. Or don't hide. There we go. I'm going to try to be more regular and maybe streaming around this time because it gives me 2 hours of free time each day. The small window. But yeah, thanks for watching. I gotta set up one of these tabs where it's just my face, but again, poor quality. And I stink, you'll smell me. Alright. Catch you guys laters.